Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
So our song for today, this is an old tune that you see in, your old school church hymnals. Hyfrydal is the tune. It is used for, now I'm going to forget. There's like a Christmas song, I think, that it's used for. This is a different song. There's like a couple other ones. You might recognize the tune. Words are a little different. This is Alleluia, Sing to Jesus. Alleluia, sing to Jesus. His the scepter, his the throne. Alleluia, his the triumph, his the victory alone. Hark the songs of peaceful Zion, thunder like a mighty flood. Jesus out of every nation has redeemed us by his blood. Hallelujah, not as orphans are we left in sorrow now. Hallelujah, he is near us. Faith believes nor questions how. Though the clouds from sight received him when the 40 days were o'er, shall our hearts forget his promise? I am with you evermore. Hallelujah, heavenly high priest here on earth, our help, our stay. Hallelujah, hear the sinful cry to you from day to day. Intercessor, friend of sinners, earth redeemer, hear our plea. Where the songs of all they send us sweep across the crystal sea. All right, let's pray. God, we're so grateful for your presence in our life. We're grateful for this journey that you have put us on, the journey of our lives. And we're so grateful for the eternity that you invite us to participate in. Help us to enter now into your eternal presence with our hearts and minds and with the way we live. Let us be transformed into your image and into the heavenly place that you call us to. We pray in your name. Amen.
You said it was old. I knew every word.
I did too.
Did you? Good. All right. Song's been around for a while. All right. Good to see you all here, sitting here with me. And then we've got Bob McDonald joining us. He said Carol's not feeling great, so hope she feels better soon. We've got Judy and Paula and Ken Osterhout. Ken, hope you're feeling better too. Good. Wonderful. So nice to have everybody here. Good group. We are going to finish up the prayer-filled life. So if you have your books, we are going to be looking at the end of the chapter on Thomas Merton, page 68 in our books. And Thomas Merton, a monk, modern day 20th century monk, lived primarily in Kentucky. That's where his not a convent. I guess the monastery is where he grew up, lived. That was his home base. And he talks to us about prayer. So we did 2 weeks on Thomas Merton and prayer. That's probably about what we're going to spend with each of these chapters, 2 weeks at the most. Reading this next one, The Virtuous Life, we might be done with that one today. We'll see. We'll see. So I was thinking, this is a good reminder before we begin. The material that we bring into our studies I look at as a springboard to conversation. So it's really, I think it's really our conversations that's the important part. This is where we're trying to, this is where we're trying to make this a rubber meets the road experience. All right, so this is really not like a book study. In other words, we're not like having a quiz at the end and you recall back to me and tell me exactly what this person said, because now some of it we may have a good understanding of what whoever our author is talking about. We might not come close. We might be way off. Maybe the conversations we're having are kind of at a deeper level than even what's being written about. So anyway, it's a springboard for conversation. And because these writers are coming from, our next writer, Gregory of Nyssa, or Nyssa, however you pronounce it, Gregory, he's from like the 300s. He's like, 300 years after Jesus. So this is stuff written a long time ago. It's just a miracle we can even figure out what he was saying because that's a long time ago. And of course, that's going to be translated from probably Greek. Anyway, Thomas Merton, not that far back. He was pretty far back, but not that far back. So we're gonna go into Merton. We'll finish this up at the beginning here, and then we'll go into the next section on the virtuous life. So this is the prayer-filled life. We're going to start with section 8. A brave and absurd attempt to evade reality. So another obstacle, and perhaps this is the most common, is spiritual inertia, inner confusion, coldness, lack of confidence. This is an obstacle to prayer we're talking about. This may be the case for those who, after having made a satisfactory beginning, experience the inevitable letdown when it comes to the life of meditation, which comes when the life of meditation gets to be serious. What at first seemed easy and rewarding suddenly comes to be utterly impossible. The mind will not work. One cannot concentrate on anything. The imagination and the emotions wander away. Sometimes they run wild. At this point, perhaps, in the midst of a prayer that is dry, desolate, and repugnant, unconscious fantasies may take over. These may be unpleasant and even frightening. More often, one's inner life simply becomes a desert which lacks all interest whatsoever. This may no doubt be explained as a passing trial, but we must face the fact that it is often more serious than that. It may be the result of a wrong start, which a blockage has appeared, dividing the inner life from the rest of one's existence. In this case, supposed inner life may actually be nothing but a brave and absurd attempt to evade reality altogether. All right, that's a whole lot to talk about here. So when we finished last week, we were looking at how Merton was saying we should kind of maintain the attitude of a beginner when it comes to prayer. Stay humble. Act like this is a brand new thing. Think of your experiences as being new, different. You're open to the possibilities. That's what a beginner does. So keeping that attitude is important, what he says. And then he talks about He's letting us know if we go at this prayer life in a very serious way, in a very committed way for a long period of time, he's letting us know we may encounter some challenges. And it doesn't mean that we're necessarily that we're doing something wrong. It could be that we did something wrong when we started this, or it could just be it's just kind of the nature of the thing. If you think about it, this might be a way to describe the life of faith too. Oftentimes, if you have a new Christian, a person who has had this maybe a revitalized faith experience, things are new and exciting. It can last for a while. It can last for weeks, months, years. But then it's like that's not a realistic expectation from now on. This is the excitement of something beginning. Same with we talk about this in premarital classes. All right, you're going to have a honeymoon period. You're going to have a period of excitement, and everything's new and it's exciting, and you're beginners, and it's an adventure. And at some point, you start to face the challenges of the everyday. So this is the same for the life of faith. When things start to get serious, we might start to get bored. We might start to feel like it's dry. We are disappointed. Just blah. So this is something that is a common occurrence, and it's part of the process. It's part of going from one stage to another stage. All right? It would be the same, kindergarten can be exciting, right? Lots of joy and excitement. We're new to school and all this kind of stuff. Eventually, though, kindergarten is going to get boring. I don't want to go back to kindergarten. I mean, it's fun to watch for a few seconds, and then after a while, it's like, okay, I'm ready to move on to other things. So the prayer life can be like this, where we've done all we know how to do. Like, we talked about the way we start our prayers. Maybe it's music, maybe it's our list of things we're thankful for, or maybe it's confession. It's like we're running out of things to confess. We're running out of things to be thankful for. We're running out of good music to listen to. So this can be a common occurrence. Now, if you're not having this experience right now, don't get disappointed. If you're on a high right now, if you're at a good spot, enjoy it, and this is really just letting us know if this does happen, it's natural, it's fine. And it doesn't mean that this is the end, because that would be kind of the next big concern is like, oh, is it over? Like, is that it? Or is it not going to be exciting anymore? This is where for example, in marriages, there's the movie and there's the phrase, the 7-year itch, right? So it's this thing, if you've been in it long enough, you know each other really, really well, and it's like, this is it. So the temptation can be, well, let me start over somewhere. All right? So somebody goes and looks for somebody new and exciting. Let me start the whole thing over again, which some people do. Some people do this in a serial way, where it's like from one to the next to the next. So it could be like this in prayer, where it's like, well, let me give up on my church, and let me give up on my pastor, and let me give up on my Bible study, and let me just try, let me try Buddhism, let me try Wicca, let me try crystals, let me try, whatever, let me try Catholicism, let me try whatever the case is. We might want to try something, but what will happen is it'll be the same thing. You're just starting over, and you'll get to that thing again. the challenge is to see that through to the next phase of your life of prayer, which is going to be different than the original one, and it's in some ways going to be better. In some ways it will be deeper. I wouldn't want to go back to having the relationship that my wife and I had in our first 5 or 10 years of being married. It was fun and it was good, but what I have right now is so much more enjoyable for me. It's like there's this peace, there's this depth, there's even this newness and excitement that's not like, I wouldn't call it like, you'd call the other one like stimulating, fireworks and electricity and all that kind of a thing. But this is exciting in a different way. It's realizing possibilities that are just endless when it comes to the love that people can share and the friendship that people can have. So prayer can be this way too. There can be something deeper, and it's just understanding sometimes it's not good. Now, he does mention at the end here that it's possible that it's not that you're going deeper and that you've reached this place of you're kind of past the excitement. Sometimes we start off with expectations that are just incorrect. So, and this is one of the big problems that we can see in spirituality, is that people might engage in spirituality as a new way to escape reality. So we can find this, we just came out of the 12-step program. So we looked at how this program can be used for people who are recovering from addictive behaviors and ways of thinking, which all of us can go through, right? So our addictive behaviors, whatever they are, we have our own preferences for what is addictive to us. Those behaviors, what they tend to be is they are, I want to use this, they are prostitutions of the real deal. They are manufactured feelings that are not grounded in reality. All right? We are created as human beings to experience something like joy. Joy is a full body and fully immersive human experience. And what we can replace that with is a high, an excitement, right? There was a phrase that was used in one of the chapters that was, I'm going to forget. It is intimacy, and there's the false version of that. Anyway, I used it as a title to the video. It's another I word, but basically it's this false sense of excitement. Oh, I just had it. It is. Anyway.
It'll come.
Yeah, it's electricity. It's excitement. That's what we get when we take substances that are mind-altering and emotion-altering substances. We get a buzz, we get a feeling, and it's very similar to other good feelings, other good emotional feelings. And so we say, well, there's joy in a bottle, there's joy in a pill, there's joy in a puff, or whatever we want to call it. But then there's the other types too. There's the whole, like, I'm going to gamble, I'm going to get that high. I'm going to, I'm going to get on a motorcycle and I'm going to drive, I'm going to ride 180 miles an hour down. I'm going to get that buzz. So those are the false, non-sustainable ways of living. It's like you can't do that. If we keep going back to the high, you're just going to need more and more. You're going to have to go faster and faster. You're going to have to drink more and more. You're going to have to shoot up more and more. You're going to have to gamble more and more. You're going to have to take greater risks. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to feel alive. And the thing is, we don't need that stuff to feel alive, because life has enough for us to engage in. So we can use, what he's saying is, we can use the spiritual life as another way to get high. And it's another thing to be addicted to. And I remember seeing this. In particular, it stood out to me as I engaged in the Pentecostal world. There's a lot of highs in the Pentecostal world, and we may have it in other. It doesn't have to be loud and exciting or anything. Sometimes there are experiences that are, more subtle or whatever. But it's essentially what we're looking for is an escape from our real life. And so real spirituality doesn't separate you from your real life. It helps you engage in your real life.
In the beginning, I felt discombobulated is the word I use. And every once in a while I still find that. It comes like in a wave once in a while. I'm thinking, where am I thinking? What am I doing? How am I going to go a straight line? Then you can't. Really can't. Mm-hmm. But I accept that now. Trying to find the way is not always easy.
So the spiritual life, when we engage in the spiritual life in a new way, it feels new. And it can have that exciting edge, that discombobulated feeling, disoriented. It's like, this doesn't feel like reality. So the trick is, how does this become every day? How does this integrate into everyday life? So what that means is that we don't run into the prayer closet to get away from our problems. And we don't leave our past, our present, our future in some other place and say oh God, help me to get away from all this. What is the crazy, there's a Calgon, there's a bubble bath or something like that. Take me away, it's so the thing is, how do we integrate this into our reality? And that means bringing it with us, bringing our real life with us somehow. So there's this learning process of what is real and what is unrealistic expectation, right? When we say, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven," that means we're not whisked away to heaven and forget every moment of our everyday lives. But instead, every moment of our everyday lives, no matter how good or bad it was, is integrated into heaven and becomes a part of heaven. Yeah, that's the thing, is that what we want is, we want release. So we'll quote Revelation where it says, "Oh, we're finally going to go to a place where there's no more tears." But what it says is something like, He'll wipe the tears away, right? So the tears are still there. They're just being wiped away. So there's a way to resolve these things. So this is why forgiveness and the principle of forgiveness is not to ignore what has happened, but is to accept what has happened. it is to say, even though this happened and it was wrong and it was painful and it should not have happened, I will accept it and be okay with it. And I will lean on God's grace to help me to integrate this and to make it a part of life. So that's where a brave and absurd attempt to evade reality, this might be one of the things that happens if we're using prayer to evade reality. What may happen is the prayer life will get dull and boring and not exciting, not because we're ready to move to the next level, but because we really haven't brought our full selves into it. And so that's what God is like, there's more, but you're holding back. You're not bring everything with you. Bring everything with you. Bring everything with you. So Jesus says, take my yoke upon you. So we still have, my burden is light. So there's this description of this life we're going into, is that we do bring our burdens, but the burdens don't weigh on us like they would before, not because they're gone, but because we're not carrying them ourselves. God is there carrying them with us. So, this is why our prayer life and our spiritual life is lifelong, because it's like integrating all this stuff that we've gone through is the challenge. All right, so let's do our last section. Firmly rooted in life, under the pretext that what is within is in fact real, spiritual, supernatural, etc. One cultivates neglect and contempt for the external as worldly, sensual, material, and opposed to grace. This is bad theology and bad asceticism. In fact, it's bad in every respect, because instead of accepting reality as it is, we reject it in order to explore some perfect realm of abstract ideals, which in fact has no reality at all. Very often the inertia and repugnance which characterize the so-called spiritual life of many Christians could perhaps be cured by a simple respect for the concrete realities of everyday life, for nature, for the body, for one's work, one's friends, one's surroundings, etc. A false supernaturalism which imagines that the supernatural is a kind of realm of abstract essences, as Plato imagined, that is totally apart from and opposed to the concrete world of nature, offers no real support to genuine life of meditation and prayer. Meditation has no point unless it's firmly rooted in life. So this is why in Revelation that talks about the next life, it talks about a new heaven and a new earth. So it's not that the earth, we focus on, the earth will one day, in the modern, the recent Amazing Grace song, My Chains Are Gone, the last verse, the earth shall soon dissolve like snow. That's one of the lines there, right? And so we talk about the end of the earth. Well, the Bible talks about a new earth, a new heaven, a new earth. And so we've got this concept that we've got all this concrete, tangible stuff around us, including these things, these meat bags that transport our real soul around. And we think about our real soul as this shiny ball of energy that is eternal and goes off into the whatever. And we leave this meat bag behind. And it's like, no, this is where all this stuff takes place. You can't separate these things. So when we look at physics, you can't separate matter and energy. Matter and energy are intertwined together. The spiritual life is not you become a spirit and leave behind this broken, terrible world. No, it is we stay here and we integrate. So this is where I think it was actually in our the text from Sunday. It talks about Christ incorporating all in all. There's that phrase, all in all. So it means it's this total acceptance and integration, and that's the process. So it's not that God created this thing and then it was done, and then we realize like, oh, it's kind of bad, so God's just going to burn it up and start all over again. No, it's actually the creative process is constantly renewing and transforming. So Jesus doesn't die and become a spirit and go off into eternity. Jesus dies and then has this new body. So it is the integration of the body and the spirit going to kind of the next phase of the next place, and then he calls us to that same process. So yes, we die to self, but not to die, but to be raised anew and transformed. So it's integrated. So prayer has no point, meditation has no point unless it's rooted in life. It's a part of life. It's not to escape from that stuff. So that means the prayer life digs in and goes to the dark places at some point, and it helps us to integrate all these things. Thankfully, in God's timing, with God's grace, God doesn't speed us along too fast and overwhelm us, even though it can be intimidating at times. All right, so that's prayer. Any last questions or comments before we move on to our next?
I have one
Sure.
kind of humorous one. This has always been one of my favorite verses. Okay, so it says Bible selection, Psalm 39. A couple of lines down, it says, "I will keep a muzzle on my mouth." and I used to say, and I still do sometimes, and sometimes the only thing I know about God's will is to keep my mouth closed. I don't know, and it kind of goes in with prayer life, I guess, that, sometimes the best prayer I can give somebody is to keep my mouth closed instead of telling them what I think.
So that's like a literal reality, and it's also like a symbolic reality of something deeper, which is the reason we muzzle our mouth is because we know if the first thing that if our initial response could be heard, it wouldn't be good, right? So sometimes in our life, it's not just our mouth, our initial feeling, our initial thought, our initial response. It may be action, it may not be a muzzle. You might try to, slap somebody upside the head, or you may try to run away, you may try to scream, you may try to. So it's like it's this recognition that I'm going to get the muzzle ready because I know me, like you said, I know me, that my first reaction is not always the best. And it's not always, it's real, but it's not necessarily the one that I would hold on to and say, this is not my best foot forward, right? Now it might be that our first response is fine. You may not always need the muzzle, but it's good to kind of keep it close by It's just this recognition that God's still working on us. And we haven't got to the place where we can trust every single instinct we have is not going to be right. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. And you know, how this gets used a lot is, I remember hearing the phrase righteous anger used a lot, right? So you see that throughout the scriptures, and sometimes it is the correct response. If somebody touches a mother's child, there will be righteous anger, right? And that might be appropriate initial response. But what we can find is that just because we feel angry and we feel righteous in our anger doesn't always mean that that's the best kind of long-term response. It might be that we realize, ooh, that anger, that initial response of anger actually might be a message telling me there's something I need to pay attention to. Because it might be that the anger it's my pride. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like somebody insulted me, and so I have to defend myself, and so then we have to kind of sit back and think about it for a while and realize, do I need to defend myself every time somebody says or does something that where it looks like they're putting me down or that they misunderstand me? I mean, do I have to always jump in and correct people? And if we feel like we have to defend ourselves, sometimes that means we're actually self-conscious and don't have that much confidence. Because if we had the confidence, somebody could say something to us and it could make us laugh because it's so stupid. You're saying this to me like it's supposed to be an insult, and you're funny. It's funny to me.
But if you stop and think about it for a few minutes, maybe you decide, hey, he's right.
It could be. It could be. We could get angry and then we could realize, oh, I'm angry because they told me the truth. Right. That's good. That's good. And this is, the prayer life is about, it's kind of putting a focus on this transformation that we're going through. We're always going through a transformation, and so we're asking and calling our attention to God is with me in this transformation. It's not always me defending myself against the world. Sometimes it's I don't like the pain that I'm going through, but I'm being made new. It's not always fun. All right, let's go to the virtuous life. And a little bigger here. Can we go there? It's a little too big. All right, this is as big as it gets. All right, the virtuous life. This is page 120, 121? Okay, 121. I'll take your word for it. I guess I cropped it out there.
Okay.
The holiness tradition, the virtuous life, is concerned with the personal moral transformation that comes through the development of what the old writers called holy habits. We are doing what we can, for example, engaging in spiritual disciplines, in order to receive from God the power to do what we cannot For example, love our enemies. We can't do it. We need God's power. So that's why we engage in holy habits to do what we can to receive the power to love our enemies. One thread you will see weaving its way through all these selections is the centrality of love as the motivation for holiness. That emphasis is particularly prominent in Richard Roll's stress on, quote, the vastness and sweetness of love. Both Teresa of Avila and Thomas à Kempis deal with temptation and the process involved in overcoming sin. We're fortunate to be able to look at this fundamental issue from both the feminine and masculine perspective. Gregory of Nyssa and John Calvin each approach holiness from the perspective of the athleti Dei, athletes of God, who are training for the race of life. Self-denial, the via negativa, and vigorous spiritual exercises, the via positiva, are both part of the training program appropriate for the development of body, mind, and spirit. Blaise Pascal reminds us of the dual nature of greatness and wretchedness that hounds our human existence. He does not quickly or easily reconcile the inner contradictions that we all feel, but in the end he does point to a, quote, light for those who desire to see. And finally, William Law reminds us that our faith must, of necessity, produce loving action. Spiritual disciplines are of no value whatsoever unless they make us more loving persons. These men and women of faith are wise in the ways of holiness. We will do well to linger long over their penetrating words. So this is the introduction to the section on the virtuous life. So we're hearing of all these different authors that we will eventually get to at some point in time. They're written at different periods of time. They focus on different topics. So just so you know, as we go through these 6 different sections, if we get to a section and the writer that we read is not resonating with us, it's okay, because there's going to be more chances to come back and hear that. And I just say that because it was okay, this writing, but it wasn't as good to me as some of the other ones. But each one of these should have, hopefully, some meat in there, or some pearls, or whatever we want to call it. But there will be more writings on this topic, and so we'll see them in deeper ways. All right, here's the introduction for the author, Gregory of Nyssa or Nyssa. I've seen it pronounced different ways. I had to look it up myself. Gregory of Nyssa, and notice he's born 300 years after Christ, and dies in 396. One of the great fathers of the church. He lived in the 4th century, a time when the persecution of the Christians was coming to an end. So the church kind of becomes the official Roman religion mid-300s. So it goes from being persecuted to being what everybody is required to. Then they end up persecuting people that are not Christians later on. So anyway, Gregory was one of the 3 Greek Cappadocian fathers. The other 2 were Gregory's brother, St. Basil, and their mutual friend Gregory of Nazianzus. That. He's been called one of the most powerful, most original thinkers ever known in the history of the church. His writings have had a great influence on the spirituality of the Eastern Church. He was well versed in Greek philosophy, Platonism, and Stoicism, but the basis of his thought was rooted in the Bible. Gregory believed that the main use of the Bible was not for historical reflection, but rather for the growth in virtue. He and the other church fathers used the Bible and its characters to teach us how to grow closer to God, how to elevate the soul to God. He saw the spiritual life as a race in which we, like St. Paul, forget what lies behind and strain forward to what lies ahead. The following excerpts are taken from Gregory's most famous work, The Life of Moses. It was written in response to requests for guidance in living the virtuous life For Gregory, perfection is discovered in continual striving, a perpetual progress rooted in the infinite grace of God. And that last line there, perfection and striving, those are kind of the two things that we'll be looking at for the virtuous life. So when we think of the virtuous life, the holy life, this means us experiencing the reality of positive change. We're being transformed. We're being made holy. And this can be, I know, growing up in the church, if I think of holiness, you think of like purity, the Puritans, the puritanical. It's easy to think of kind of a rigid, strict morality that is not fun, it's not life-giving, it is restriction. We saw these words, the via negativa and the via positiva. So there are two aspects to this holy life. One is this engagement in these new positive things, and then there's self-discipline. We restrain ourselves, we muzzle ourselves, we stop ourselves from what we want to do. Now, this doesn't mean, hopefully the holy life is not the muzzled life. And sometimes that's what it's described as. I think of a chastity belt, right? This is where it's like we have to use these constraints to prevent something happening that actually is like life-giving and life-producing, right? So there are ways to live where we engage the feelings and the urges and just everything that it means to be human, but at the same time we recognize that there are inclinations, tendencies, schemes, selfishness. There is an aspect to life that must be either be kept in check or must be outgrown. We put away the childish things. We become more mature. But at the same time, Jesus tells us we need to be like children, right? So we need to have the joy and spontaneity of childhood, but we don't carry with us the ignorance and the selfishness that can go along with being a spoiled brat, right? That's what we grow out of. So it's this integration thing where we never let go of some childishness, but we also relinquish some childishness too. So it's not, and we shouldn't look at it as I'm just stopping myself from doing what I really want to do. There is an aspect of that, but that shouldn't really be the essence of what the holy life is. I grew up in some more conservative circles that would probably be kind of in the holiness category. So for example, there were rules put into place, and the intention of those rules was to encourage a holy, virtuous life. So some of the things had to do with don't wear makeup or jewelry. So the rationale for that was we don't call attention to ourselves, we don't become self-centered, we don't try to be a temptation to other people. We're not showing off or manipulating or whatever. So it wasn't like, some religions even around the world today will just make women put a black piece of cloth over their whole body, and you can't even see who they are. You just see a sheet walking around, right? So it wasn't that extreme, but at the same time, the whole no makeup thing became a way of like, makeup and jewelry can be an expression of what's on the inside and can be like a creative way of just having fun, being alive, you know, not being dreary, being happy, you know, and that kind of a thing. So the downside to putting a rule in place that says no makeup and no jewelry, the downside to that was like, you kind of nixed the fun and the joy and the beauty and all of that kind of thing too. That would be that's like living with the muzzle, you know. It's like, oh, we don't want to let that get carried away, so we're gonna restrain ourselves. And that's just one example, right?
No dancing, no movies should be.
Yeah. Yeah, the joke is, why do Baptists not have sex standing up? Because you might think they're dancing.
That's a good one.
So that's just ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous that we put these constraints on to limit things from getting out of hand, but at the same time, we're also limiting kind of just what's basic human nature and what it means to be alive, right? So, and it's hard to bring a balance to that, you know. Growing up, if we used the wrong word, it was soap in the mouth, right? But later on, fortunately, I come to find out, you know, there are some bad words that are extremely appropriate for certain circumstances. Now, that doesn't mean you use them all the time, but there may come some moments in your life where if I'm going to express my experience in this moment, these are the words that I would use. And again, it doesn't mean we stay stuck there, but it means we're being honest. You know, there's a benefit to being honest. When somebody hurts you, you may describe the pain, and if you're going to honestly describe the pain of what you're going through, to be completely honest, you're going to have to use some words that you may not always use. Right? So to just constrain, to be holy, to never use those words, we can keep ourselves from being honest. We can keep ourselves from being transparent. We can keep ourselves from being authentic. And the thing is, authenticity and honesty and transparency is messy. It's just messy, and that's just the way that it is. One of the things about being, you know, the name of our church is Faith Congregational Church. Congregational means we want to hear what everybody thinks, which is messy. Now, we hopefully have some balance to that. At some point, it's like we do need to reach a consensus. Even though we don't all agree, we need to reach a consensus to move forward. But we still keep open dialogue along the way, right? So, and there's different ways to do this. We've talked about this for congregational meetings. So there are some congregational churches, you go to their annual meeting, and the annual meeting is going to last for 1, 2, 3 hours because they're having this back and forth on how much money should go in the budget for this, and should we include this for next year's goals or not, and I have a real problem with this and I need to tell everybody, you know, so that can become that. We haven't used that method ourselves, But what we have done is we kind of announced this is what we're going to be looking at, and then we kind of have individual conversations for a period of time, answer questions, get people's feedback, and then we may find it's not time for us to vote on this yet because we're not on the same page. Because if we're going to vote and it's going to be like 66 to 33%, do you really want a third of everybody not supporting what you're doing? No, I think we want to keep talking it through until we can all kind of get on the same page. We may never get to 100%, but that means we're encouraging authenticity and encouraging people to express who they are and what they think. And that's not always the case in some churches. It's like, all right, I'm in charge. You may have your opinions. I don't want to hear them. This is what we're doing, and that's another way to do it. It's really efficient. That's an efficient way to do work. That's kind of how the military works. You do what you're told, right? And if you're somebody's in charge of you, everybody has somebody in charge of them. All right, so we're not really going to get into this, are we? The divine race. At horse races, the spectators intent on victory shout out to their favorites in the contest, even though the horses are eager to run. From the stands, they participate in the race with their eyes, thinking to incite the charioteer to keener effort, at the same time urging the horses on while leaning forward and flailing the air with their outstretched hands instead of a whip. They do this not because their actions themselves contribute anything to the victory, but in this way, by their goodwill, they eagerly show in voice and deed their concern for the contestants. I seem to be doing the same thing myself, most valued friend and brother, while you are competing admirably in the divine race along the course of virtue, light-footedly leaping and straining constantly for the prize of the heavenly calling. I exhort, urge, and encourage you vigorously to increase your speed. All right, so that's one way that we help each other, I guess. One way we help each other. So it is a race. There is a goal. There is a destination. It's not a stroll. It's not a stroll. It's not an easy going, one day we'll get there maybe kind of a deal. It's not something that you engage in and then you take a break and I'll come back and I'll pick up where I left off. No, this is I got a goal in mind. I'm doing my absolute best. People train for this, so there's self-discipline involved. There's pushing oneself to the max. So that's the analogy that's used with the virtuous life. I don't know that we always feel the urgency of a race in the virtuous life. So anyway, all right. We're going to race a little bit here. Since the letter which you recently sent requested us to furnish you with some counsel concerning the perfect life, I thought it only proper to answer your request. Although there may be nothing useful for you in my words, perhaps this example of ready obedience will not be wholly unprofitable for you. For if we who have been appointed to the position as fathers over so many souls consider it proper here in our old age to accept a commission from youth, how much more suitable is it, inasmuch as we have taught you, a young man, to obey voluntarily, that the right action of ready obedience be confirmed in you. All right, so it's a race, and a way to get there is obedience, voluntary obedience. Exciting, right? Is So it's following the example of people that have gone before. We will be told to do things, and the response of trust is obedience. That's the part that's helpful for me, because I still have that like childhood response to the word obey. I don't like it. You know? We used to make fun of my brother and his wife because they would, when they were correcting their child, they would actually yell, obey. You know? And like that would help or something. So,
It's better than,
other words.
no, I was going to say, because I said so.
Oh yeah. That's right up there. That's right up there because I said so. So obedience does signal that you're doing it. You're just doing it. You're doing it because you were told, right? And that's it. I think further analysis of it is, if we trust God, if we love and trust God, then whatever God is saying, that's what we want to do. We're not completely devoid of fear in our relationship with God, but it's not the foundation of our obedience. If we obey out of fear, it's not really obedience, because obedience is voluntary. Fear is not voluntary. So I prefer the word trust. It's like an instinct of trust. It's a response of trust. If somebody that I love and that I trust tells me something, my response is yes. Yes, of course. Whereas if I fear someone, I may respond right away, but doesn't at all mean my heart is in it. And it might be, there's the whole, I may be standing up on the outside, but on the inside I'm sitting down, or the other way around. I may be sitting down on the outside, but on the inside I'm standing up. Whatever the case may be, we can. So we're not asked to, and this is one of the mistakes of the church, is that it engaged in fear, and it's not just a religious thing, it's a human thing. It's a human tendency to control, and it's an easy way to control is through fear. Now, again, our relationship with God is not completely devoid of fear, because we have an awe and a respect for God that it should frighten us a little bit. I love my father deeply. Growing up, I had respect bordering on fear, and it wasn't, and my father never did anything to me to make me afraid. My father didn't hit me. I didn't see my father didn't yell. He was always loving and caring, but there was something about him that I wanted to do the right thing, and it was there was some respect / fear in there. And some of it is the whole You want to be acceptable. You don't want to be a disappointment. That kind of a thing in there. Over with time and with growth as I become an adult, I don't have that thing anymore that I did as a kid. I've tried to be aware of that as a parent with my son, that I want him to be aware that I do know better